I appreciate you joining me today, and I hope you're having a good day. We're going to be looking at Joseph in the house of Potiphar as well as the dungeon today. Our hymn is the hymn Be Still My Soul.
Be still, my soul, the Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend, through thorny ways leads to a joyful end.
Okay, we're in Genesis. We're going to be looking in chapter 39, but I want you to see something. Yesterday we spoke about Joseph being sold. So the chapter begins, chapter 37 are his dreams, and then he's sold off to the Ishmaelites. Jacob hears the news. Well, chapter 38 is Judah and Tamar, and if you're familiar with that account, you know it's not a pleasant account. And the question is, why is it here? Well, one reason is because it's through Judah and Tamar that someone is going to be born named Perez. And if you're familiar with the genealogy, you know what that means. We're following the seed promise. But something else I wanted to mention is that, do you remember when Tamar identifies Judah? She has something in her hand. And she's, might look in verse 25, by the man whom these belong, I am with child. And lo and behold, Judah acknowledges them and says, she's been more righteous than me. So now Joseph is in Potiphar's house, and before we look at the account in more detail or to make a few other points, you might think about what was in Potiphar's wife's hand. That you have two women holding something in their hand. And Tamar is holding something in her hand that shows Judah had not been righteous. Potiphar's wife has something in her hand, and she thinks that it shows Joseph has not been righteous, but in fact he had been. I just thought it was interesting that both women have something in their hand, and they are either proving something or trying to prove something. You might consider it. Back to the account, though. As Joseph is sold, he's in Potiphar's house. The Lord is with him. And the Lord made all that he did prosper in his hand. So Joseph finds favor, but Joseph is very handsome. Potiphar's wife tries to sleep with him. He refuses, and this happens day by day. And so eventually she catches him by the garment, says, lie with me, and he flees outside, leaving the garment in her hand. She uses it to accuse him of trying to rape her, is what it looks like. And of course it was a lie, but the master either believes it or to pacify his wife, whatever the case may be, he ends up being sent to the prison. The Lord is still with him even in prison, though. And whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. Then you have the account of the prisoners. You have the butler and the baker, as Joseph was over the things in the prison because the Lord was with him. And you have the butler and the baker and the dreams. And you have the butler telling him his dream. And then you have, of course, the baker in his dream. The butler is going to be released from prison, and go back to his position once again. The baker, on the other hand, is going to be put to death. So here Joseph is, and years are going by. I believe Joseph, when he has his dreams, he's 17, and it seems like when he is before Pharaoh, if I remember correctly, I believe he's 30. Years are going by. Don't quote me on that 30. I think that's the case. It's in the next chapter or two. But this is what we have. What points might we make? One is this. Servants need to obey their masters in all sincerity, not just with eye service, but do a good job. Not only to the gentle, but also to the harsh. Whatever position Joseph was in, whether it was with Potiphar, or whether it was in the prison, or whether it's under Pharaoh, Joseph was faithful in all that he did. And that is a good example for us to learn from. Servants, obey your masters. It's a verse in the New Testament. Obey your masters, not with eye service, but with sincerity as unto Christ. Joseph does exactly that. There's another verse in the New Testament that talks about possessing your vessel with honor, and it's talking about sexual immorality. And we need to do that as well. And Joseph is a good example of that. He's in a far-off land. He's a slavery. He could easily have thought that the Lord had given up on him, but he did not think that. He could have taken advantage of the situation. He could have taken advantage of his handsomeness, and he could have slept with his boss's wife. Most folks would have. A lot of folks would have. But Joseph did not. I believe it's 1 Corinthians chapter 6 that talks about glorifying God with our body. Also talking about issues concerning sexual immorality. Marriage is honorable amongst all, and the marriage bed undefiled. Joseph tells Potiphar's wife, how does he phrase it here? Let me back up to the previous chapter. Let's see. Because he tries explaining to her. And he says, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house. He's committed everything into my hand. There's no one greater in this house than I. He hasn't kept anything back but you, and you're his wife. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? It's like, I'm not going to sin against God. I'm not going to do this evil against my master. And I'm not going to do this evil against you. And I'm not going to do this evil against myself. She spoke to Joseph day by day, but he did not heed her to lie with her or to be with her. Not playing around with it. Glorify God with your body. And when people do mistreat us, we need to still do good. And that's hard to do, but when we are mistreated, and you could be thinking about Potiphar's wife, you could be thinking about Potiphar himself, and it's like, why are you believing her? She's lying. You could talk about the prisoners. The prisoners, the first prisoner, when Joseph says, remember me, when you're back in Pharaoh's good graces, remember me, and the man forgets him for 2 years. When people forget us, when people mistreat us, when people abuse us, we still need to do good. We do not return evil for evil. We return good for evil, and this is how evil is overcome. I consider. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.